What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Robert Sikes, aka Keto Savage. Robert wakes up early and he works his ass off and he sees results. Here's the thing, he's no different than you. Any success he's experienced thus far is attainable from anybody willing to put in the work. Look, we live in an era where everything is automatic, everything is superficial, and everything is expected for nothing. Robert says that life does not create greatness, it destroys it. So this episode is about going all in on your dreams, working hard, and truly creating the life that you want. You see, Robert was broke, about to be evicted, sleeping on couches, and he built this multiple seven-figure empire in the keto world where he now services keto people all over the world with keto bricks, and it's quite the inspiring story of hard work and determination. If you're listening to this episode looking for some secret life hack for that one thing you can do, I'll tell you that right now, it's hard work. And if you're not the person putting in the hard work, maybe this episode isn't for you, because that is a lot of what we dive into and the tenacity it takes to create greatness. I think you guys are going to love Robert's energy. You're going to love his story. We're really going to have a lot of fun here. So I got to meet him through Adam Shibley. And as you guys know who listen to this podcast often, Adam is one of my best friends who we just hit it off. And this is why Robert and I really just hit it off. Now, before we get there, I want to remind you guys that we're less than 2 weeks away from the Growth Now Virtual Summit. What you want to do is head over to gnmlive.com/virtual and grab your tickets now. They're only $29. Come join us. Come join me, Natalie Jill, Brooks Holland, Anthony Trucks, and so many more, and learn how to create the life that you truly desire, how to tap into the person you were meant to be, how to grow your online business, how to grow your coaching business. We're going to cover it all, and it's going to be available for 30 days for you. So it's not going to be like you have to be there live, although I highly recommend it because we're going to be giving away prizes. But head over to gnmlive.com/virtual and grab them now. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Keto Savage, Robert Sikes. Robert, welcome to the show, man.
What is going on, brother? Thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. I'm excited about the conversation. I say it's so funny. I feel like I start so many episodes with this is a long time coming, but it really was. I mean, I think it was October of this last year. We were in Indiana. We both stayed at Adam's house for his event, Million Pound Mission Live. And we just kind of hit it off, man. We had good conversation. Adam goes to bed at 4 p.m. because that's his bedtime. And me, you and Danny stayed up late and we had some great conversation. And I was like, we need to have you on the show. And so I'm excited to dive into your story, not only from the standpoint of what you've accomplished in the bodybuilding world, but also what you've accomplished now in the business world, which is absolutely incredible and kind of what's in the future for you. But why don't we take a second and talk about who's Robert today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just that guy. Like I don't ever want to put myself on a pedestal, because the whole point of my business, my brand, my empire is to showcase and illustrate that I'm just another person. And if I've done it, that anybody else wants to, and I really want to empower people to feel that they can do things like I've done, or whatever their calling is in life, they can also pursue and achieve. So I want to throw that out there first, because I'm nothing special. But yeah, I'm a lifetime natural bodybuilder. I've been bodybuilding now for 12 years. I've been keto for 5 or 6 years now. And I kind of, did not start out that way. I was going the whole corporate ladder routes, did not feel fulfilled in that position, and totally jumped ship and started to get into business and entrepreneurship. Had several failed attempts, learned a bunch in the process, and finally found what stuck when I decided to just double down on what my passions were, which was always fitness and nutrition. And, I've kind of grown the empire that I have now, and I'm continuing to grow it, and it's just getting bigger and better. And I'm super excited for what's to come, man.
No, I love it, man. And it's funny, like people might not know the name Robert Sikes, but if they know anything about fitness, specifically keto, they may know the name Keto Savage.
Yep.
And that's kind of the brand that you've built for yourself, which has now gone into Keto Bricks. And we'll get into all that stuff. But you said you've been doing keto for 5 or 6 years. Like that's before the trend.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely before the trend. I mean, I think keto really hit its stride and kind of peaked in 2017, 2018, at least according to Google Trends. But I was doing it long before then, before there was any podcasts on it, before there was any books and websites and cookbooks and whatnot. I just kind of found it by accident. Honestly, I was following a traditional bro diet approach to nutrition, and I developed a bunch of eating disorders after my first competition. And I had to find something that was more sustainable because what I was doing was just going to wind up killing me. And I kind of stumbled upon keto by accident and haven't looked back, man. Like it's totally changed the way I look at nutrition, totally, flipped my relationship with food upside down and back into a healthy state. And I feel like it's honestly the best and most sustainable approach to nutrition that I've personally ever incorporated.
No, I love it. And so you talk about how, you went into this bodybuilding competition and you ate just the way that you kind of were told, right? The bro diet of this is how we do it to get in shape for a bodybuilding competition. But then you kind of quickly glossed over the fact that you kind of developed some eating disorders. Let's go into that a little bit. What did that look like for you? Because I think a lot of people don't really put that in line with like males and eating disorders. It's usually looked at as like a female thing. So what was that? What did that look like for you? And kind of what did that create for you in your life? What came up for you?
Man, it was rough. And you're absolutely right. I feel like a lot of people associate that with like female demographic, but it's really common, especially in the bodybuilding industry. It's very common amongst males and females. But for me, I had followed traditional wisdom that suggested I bulk up really big before leaning out for a show. So I bulked up to 230 pounds, and I'm only 5'7", 5'8", so that's not a pretty 230 pounds. And I gave myself 12 weeks to lean out for this competition, my first show. And I thought I was going to step on stage at 200 pounds, lose 30 pounds over the course of 12 weeks. I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks, and I lost a ton of muscle, and I basically starved myself, man. Like I was eating a whole bunch of highly processed crap food to get that big. And then I just like starved myself for lack of a better. I mean, I was literally starving myself, lost a ton of muscle and got down to 150 12 weeks later. And my relationship with food was totally skewed. Like I didn't know what true satiety was. I didn't know what true hunger was. It was just totally irrelevant to me. I didn't know what the human body should eat anymore because my perspective was all blown out of proportion. So after the show was over, I went out to eat with my folks and celebrate. And I ate so much food, man. I went to Red Lobster, and this was long before I was keto, and I ate like 5 main courses and a bunch of dessert platters, and I probably put down 20,000 calories, and I literally gained 20 pounds in 24 hours. And I looked at myself in the mirror the next day when I woke up, and I was heartbroken, man. Like I had worked so hard for so long without missing a beat to get down to that show leanness. I won the show, and then I feel like I just thrown it all away in 24 hours. And then that kind of started this massive cycle of binging and purging. And then, that lasted for years, man. It wasn't a pretty picture.
So what made you get out of it? I know you said you ended up finding keto, but like what was there like an awakeness to you where you're like, oh, this isn't good? What, did somebody else say it to you? Was it internally? What did that look like in that moment where you're like, I need to fix this?
I don't think it was anybody else so much as I knew it was not healthy. Like by default, like it was just like if you're eating a bunch of food, like you're sneaking food, like I would go to Chinese buffets and I'd like just totally pig out. And then I'd literally walk outside the parking lot and puke somewhere in the parking lot because I couldn't even make it to my vehicle. Like that's just not right.
Wow. Yeah.
So I knew that was not good. And then I started playing around with a bunch of different dieting protocols to try and find something that allowed me to see. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was like a hormone imbalance. I didn't know if it was all mental. Like I didn't know what the underlying issue was, but I was searching for a solution. And I started doing a diet called carbohydrate backloading, which is basically eating keto during the first half of the day and then eating a bunch of high glycemic index, carbs right before you go to bed. Is a protocol by John Kiefer. And I noticed that I felt much better before I had the carbs. So I just I'll just take those out of the equation entirely. So I was doing carb backloading minus the carbs, and lo and behold, that was keto. kind of in a roundabout way. And I just felt much better. I felt like my mood stabilized. I felt like I actually knew what hunger was, what satiety was. I felt like I had a better relationship and better handle on what my hunger signals were. And my performance only improved. My mental clarity improved. My sleep got better. Like everything got better. And it was weird because everybody in the gym was like, there's no way you can train without carbs. That's where you're getting your energy. You can never compete without carbs. They were just all naysayers. But I'm like, well, you know what? Even if I can't see the gains that I want to in the gym, I just feel so much better now that it's a worthwhile sacrifice. But it wasn't a sacrifice. I continued to make progress. I continued to get better as a bodybuilder. And I decided to do a competition as a ketogenic bodybuilder. And that's when I earned my pro card and kind of proved them all wrong.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so obviously you ended up getting healthy. What was the draw for you into bodybuilding? Like, were you one of those kids that saw Arnold Schwarzenegger when you were a kid and you're like, I need that? Like, what was the draw?
It wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was tiny, man. I was 115 pounds in high school. I was the skinny guy that
That's
couldn't get any girl.
crazy.
Yeah, I was tiny. And my uncle played football, and he was kind of like the more outgoing, just more boisterous, just more fun-loving guy of the family. And he was bigger, he had more muscle. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to emulate that personality, that look. I just want to kind of, follow that path. And he also owned his own business, and he taught me a lot about entrepreneurship. So I kind of emulated a lot of the things that he was doing, and he got me into working out. And I've since surpassed him with that endeavor, and he gives me a hard time about it to this day. But yeah, he was my initial motivating factor to get into the gym.
Nice. And so obviously you've gone on and now you're like, okay, I'm in the keto world. Talk a little bit about, to people listening, like they may have heard what keto is. They may not be totally aware. I told you jokingly before that I took this 2-week challenge with Adam to do keto, and I made it 3 days. I was like, this isn't for me. So what's your take on, number one, is keto what is keto? And number two, can everybody do it, or should everybody do keto? Like, what's your take on that? Cause I think sometimes in the health world, people kind of like, this is what I do, and they kind of force it on everybody. Like, what is your take on that?
So by definition, keto is simply changing your body's primary fuel source. Like if you're eating carbohydrates, your body's relying on carbs and glucose for energy. When you remove the carbohydrates and you remove the glucose and the sugars, your body switches to producing internally, endogenously, ketones via fat oxidation. So it basically, it's a evolutionary starvation mechanism that we humans have evolved to tap into in case food is scarce. Basically, if we don't have food, we can tap into our own stored body fat as a way to survive and fuel our day-to-day activities. You can create the same phenomenon through dietary means by removing the carbohydrates and eating a diet high in dietary fat and adequate protein with very minimal carbs. So that's basically what it is from a dietary standpoint. And as far as can everybody do it, I think everybody should try it. I don't necessarily think everybody should do it indefinitely because, what works well for one may not be what works best for all. But I feel like a lot of people try it for 2 days, probably similar to you, and just don't give it the time it takes to truly adapt. I mean, if you've been eating carbohydrates your entire life and you totally shift your body's fuel supply, it's going to take more than a couple of days for your body to kind of reacclimate to that new fuel supply. So giving it an honest, several month period to truly adapt, I think is key. But once you tap into that level of adaptation and you can benefit and see the benefits from what that brings, it's hard to go back.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like you said, you get addicted to how you feel, right? Like you're like, well, you when you start to pay attention to how you feel versus the way you look, right? Like you're like, well, I felt better when I didn't have before I had the carbs. And so that's kind of what I fell into. And then keto became a thing. And you were doing, again, we mentioned you were doing it long before anybody else. But when did you become keto savage?
I became keto savage on July 1st, 2016. That was when I wrote this ebook that I thought was going to make me millions. And I built this website that I thought was going to be like number one on Google. And I launched it on July 1st. Keto Savage was the brand. I started a podcast then. I started a YouTube channel then. Like I just went all in. Like I was listening to a bunch of Gary Vee at the time, and he was talking about, crush it. I'm sure you read the book. It's all about finding your passion, doubling down that niche, creating content and value around that topic, and then, just pushing that content out via whatever mediums you feel good at. So that's what I was doing. I was trying to create a podcast. My first podcast was recorded in my closet with a black beach towel as the backdrop. The YouTube videos were recorded with a cell phone that was blurry. I mean, it was total primitive, but it worked. And I started to gain some momentum. I started to get, actually, I did not gain any momentum. Let me be honest here. I didn't have any viewers, didn't have any listeners, no downloads. I would spend 3 hours watching a tutorial on YouTube about how to make a YouTube video, which would then take me 3 hours to make. And then 3 people would watch it. Like, it was not a very good trend. But I knew that I felt good about it. I knew that it had such a profound impact on my life personally that other people could probably also benefit from it. And I just felt compelled to keep pumping out the content. That's what I did, man. And looking back now, several years later, it's like grown to what it is, and it's still continually growing. And I just feel very blessed, very fortunate to have the opportunity to put this information out there.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that slow growth, because I know I was just recently on your show and we talked about, being consistent when things aren't necessarily showing you the results that you desire, right? Like when I started this podcast and nobody listened and I was like, what am I doing? What made you stay consistent other than like the Gary V and I read a book and all of a sudden the switch is on? What were you like? Because most people would be like, look, I'm going to launch this huge thing. It's going to blow up. Keto Savage is the jam. It's going to crush it. And then all of a sudden you launch and you don't see those results and nobody's paying attention. Like, what made you stay with it and stay with that brand and obviously now see the fruits of your labor?
Well, before I launched it, I asked myself, like, just a little bit more backstory here. Like, I had graduated college. I moved up to Washington State away from all of my family. I was in the corporate job at the railroad. I was a train master, so I was management of, all the conductors and engineers at Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. And that was very unfulfilling. And I was looking for a way to find fulfillment in life, like find a way to add value and give me purpose. And I'd always been into fitness. I'd always been into nutrition, and I had been doing keto at that point. So I felt very strongly about that as a lifestyle. And I walked out in the woods one day. I was like sitting, watching the sunset. And I was just like asking myself some soul searching questions. Like, what can I do to add more value than I take? What am I very passionate about? What am I very skilled at? And it just kept coming back that, okay, look, I know my stuff when it comes to natural bodybuilding. I know my stuff when it comes to keto. I feel like keto is about to explode. This is something that I'm going to do every single day anyways, because I believe in it and because I love it. So why don't I find a way that I can sustainably produce content around these things that I'm already doing and just see what happens? And for that reason, it wasn't really hard to keep chipping away, even though there wasn't much momentum, because I was already doing it. Like, I was already living the lifestyle. So finding a way to, learn how to create a YouTube or podcast around the lifestyle I was already living wasn't that much of an obstacle.
I love it, man. And so, you talk about, and I don't know the number, but you have a large following on Instagram and people are really kind of locked into everything that you're doing. What was the turning point? Was there a turning point, like a moment where it was like all of a sudden people are tuning in and it started resonating with people? Did you find a certain direction to go in, or was it just that consistent, slamming down to the hammer that got you there?
I think it was just the consistent slamming down the hammer. There wasn't any particular interview or podcast or video that just blew up. The first time I got invited to speak at a conference was at KetoCon, which is one of the largest conferences in the keto space. And it was in 2017. And that was after I had just earned my pro card following a ketogenic prep for that 2017 season. And that was an aha moment for me, because that was the first time I'd been never able to see so many people interested in the same thing under one roof. And that was like that was a really assuring moment that gave me just total clarity in knowing that, look, this is a need that people have. People are interested in the subject matter. People want to learn more. And that just, like, if there was ever any doubt that I was on the right path, that conference kind of just threw that out the window.
Yeah. How many people were there that year?
Honestly, not that many. I think it was only like 500. And then the next year it was like 1,500. And then it was like 3,000. Like, it's doubled or more than doubled every year they've had it. But 500 people for me at the time was a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like, again, that was about, okay, first of all, what I'm hearing is you found a passion, something that you're very passionate about, a lifestyle you wanted to live, and you doubled down on it. Like, you really lived the brand, right? So a conversation that has been coming up lately in my world is how there's so many fraudulent people out there, right? So people who will talk the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And you're somebody who you walked the walk and then found a way to talk the talk. And I love that aspect of like, look, go live your life the best way you possibly can, and then truly find a way to capitalize on it. And that's essentially what you did. So what are some of the services you're providing people now? Like, I want to get into the keto bricks because they're fascinating to me. They also taste very good, which blows my mind. But like, let's talk about that a little bit. How did you stumble across this idea of a keto brick? Like, start with saying what is it? Because a lot of people might not know what a keto brick is.
So a keto brick is a 1,000 calorie shelf stable meal replacement bar. But I don't like to call it a bar because it's not a bar, it's a brick. But that's basically what it is.
Literally a brick.
It is literally a brick. But honestly, see, that was also a product of my, living and breathing the ethos. I mean, I am not a believer in the fake it till you make it philosophy. Like, I never have been, never will be, and I advise against it wholeheartedly. The keto brick was a product that I never even intended to make into a product. It was something that I used for my own personal benefit and consumption during my 2017 prep. I wanted a shelf-stable meal replacement that had the perfect ketogenic macros, that made tracking my macronutrients easy and convenient. And I started formulating different, concoctions to be able to fit that need. And I made it. I had it on a YouTube video. I was just kind of like nonchalantly showing people what it was that I was eating that day. And I got all these comments about like, hey, what is that? What's the recipe? Where can I buy it? And I just kind of like threw it off because I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, this is something I'm working on. And my mom, probably one of my only subscribers at the time, she was like, you got to start making these into products and selling them. People are asking about them. So I'm like, no, it's no big deal. And then my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, she's like, well, let's just try this and see what can become of it. So that's what we did. She got her health food service certification. I started diving into what it would take to create a physical product business. And man, we just started doubling down and hustling hardcore. Like we did not sleep. We were our little bitty apartment in Arkansas, when we moved back to Arkansas, was literally a warehouse manufacturing facility for these bricks. I mean, we had no living room furniture, no furniture at all. We had like steel storage racks, commercial racks of ingredients, shipping supplies. We would stay up all night making these at this little bitty kitchen space that we rented by the hour. And then we'd drive 3 hours back to our apartment and then package them all up and ship them all out. Like, it was total bootstrap from the ground up, and it just took off, man. But it's been a crazy journey, but I'm super, super proud of that business.
Yeah. So like, what are you now? I know you just bought a huge facility. Like, what are you guys doing numbers wise now? Cause I know you come out with a new flavor and it sells out in minutes. Like, what are you guys doing now from this little tiny apartment startup to now this place where like you said, you just built this massive warehouse?
Yeah, so we went from living in this little bitty apartment and then commuting 3 hours one way to rent this commercial kitchen space by the hour. From there, we moved into 2 warehouse buildings that used to be an old bakery and chocolate factory. So it already had all the kitchen stuff that we needed. So we moved in there and we were actually living in the warehouse. We're still living in the warehouse. And then we added another warehouse building in that same block to it. So now we have 3 warehouse buildings. One is what we live in. It's got like the podcast booth. It's got the gym. Like, it's our little compound. We've got our employees that come here. We've got our kitchen. We've got everything in house. And then we just purchased a massive warehouse space that used to be an old grocery store. And it is 2 times bigger than the 3 combined buildings that we're in now. And we're going to take a year to totally renovate it, demo it all out, start from the ground up, and just build it out and spec it out like we want it. And then we're going to move into that in a year.
I love it, man. I love hearing that journey. And what I'm hearing is like complete mental fortitude and having the right mindset and everything that you're doing. Like, let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what does it take for you at least? And what do you feel like you had to overcome to get into those, I'm not sleeping, I'm working 24/7 to fulfill orders? Like, how did you continue to push through when the financial reward wasn't there yet?
I was $250,000 in debt. I knew if I didn't, I was going to be screwed. That was a pretty big motivating factor. Plus, when we moved back to Arkansas, I brought Crystal with me. So, I was looking at her and I'm like, I got to create a life for her. I got to create a life that I'm proud to live. Like, I just felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. And I knew, like, the buck stops here. Like, it's up to me. And we weren't making it. Like, we didn't have any cash flow. We were not safe. We were massively in debt, and we had a lot riding on this. So it was kind of like, we either make it or we don't. And there is no plan B with me. It's like, this is our plan A. We're going to figure it out, or we're not going to figure it out. That I feel like so many people let there be a safety net that they can fall back on. But when you have a safety net, you just, you don't see opportunities that you would normally see. You're blinded. And for me, it's like, I just ripped that safety net off and I'm like, let's go for it all the way and see what happens.
$250,000 in debt. That's no joke. Like, how does somebody even get into $250,000 in debt?
So I had that job at the railroad, and I bought a house. So that was $155,000. And I had, I just got out of college and I was making this big boy job. I was in corporate management. I'm like, let's start actually living like I'm not a college kid anymore. So I started, like, I bought a nice computer. I financed a freaking Tempur-Pedic foam mattress because I'd been sleeping on my dad's old mattress my whole life up to that point, So I'm like, let's start getting some nice things. Yeah. So it was just a summation of that. And then when I quit the railroad, I had tried to get into real estate. That was kind of one of the business endeavors I had pursued. Like, I tried to get into real estate. I got my real estate's license in Washington State, which is where I was at the time. And I had planned on buying fourplexes and having this rental income. But when I quit the railroad, I was under contract with the bank. And since I quit the railroad, my financing, went out the window. So they disapproved me for the loan after that. And then I had no rental income and I had no income. And I basically just started living off of credit cards. And that's pretty much how I bought groceries. But it definitely caught up with me.
That's wild, man. I love hearing your story because it really is a story of a true success, right? Like, obviously it took you time, it took failure, it took all the things, but you made it happen. Like, you grinded. Is that a word? You grinded it out. You did all the things, and here you are, right? And you're building, like you said, this empire, this Keto Savage empire with keto bricks, and truly living the life that you're saying you're living, which I love seeing. And so the cool part about this podcast is I get to interview successful people all the time, right? However you want to define success. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. So it's definitely not monetary. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. Like, you have to have enough money to be able to put food on the table. It's nice to be able to go into a grocery store and not worry about how much food costs. It's nice to not have to constantly be shuffling money between accounts because you got a bill coming out like I used to do. So it's nice to have enough money to be, comfortable. But money is definitely not the defining factor for success. What success is, in my mind, is, adding more value than you're taking and feeling fulfilled in that value that you do add. Like, for me, I look at my life and I want to be known and remembered as someone that's empowered others to believe in themselves, to pursue their passion, no matter what the hardships, no matter what the obstacles, to just double down on what their love in life is for and is, and then create a lifestyle around that. That's what I've done with fitness. That's what I've done with nutrition. That's what I've got going with a lot of other things that are in the fire right now. And I feel like people, they just doubt themselves. So I want to empower people to do that. And if you're doing that, and if you're living that, and if your life is allowing you to survive and thrive in an environment that you're passionate about, that is success, especially when it has a positive impact on other people. Like the emails I get, the comments I get, the messages I get about how something I said on a podcast, something I said in a YouTube video, something I wrote about has positively impacted other people's lives. That is so much more fulfilling than just whatever I do personally. So that's how I would define success. As far as 3 things I do on a daily basis to ensure that happens, well, I guess kind of going back to basics, one would be to, a lot of my success as it is kind of in a physical standpoint has been built on, just consistently grinding out my training and nutrition. So one thing I do just to kind of make sure that is always constant is I'll always train and eat good food on a day-to-day basis. I feel like that's a good, sturdy foundation. I now have employees, so I try and instill some kind of life lesson or value in them so that I'm kind of paying it forward going into the future. So I try and do that every single day. We have like a weekly or a daily meeting. We have our daily meetings at 8 a.m. every morning, and we'll go over a quote. We'll go over what that quote means to us, how we can apply that quote in our lives. how we can make today better. And I feel like that's one tangible way I can pay it forward. And then one other thing that I like to do is I've got my wife, Crystal. She's been with me every step of this journey. She is my rock. I mean, she has been by my side through thick and thin. And if I can do those other two things and then end the day with her on a positive note and just do something as simple as go for a walk or cook a meal together and just reflect on the day's success and what we're going to do tomorrow, that's a win in my book.
I love it, man. I love it. So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement, and I wrap up every single interview with one question. But before I get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get these bricks if they're keto? How do they learn from you on how to even start the keto diet? What's all the good information?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm super easy to find. If you just Google Keto Savage, you'll find me. If you want a brick, just Google Keto Brick and you'll find the bricks. And same respectively on all the social platforms, Keto Savage and Keto Brick on all the social interwebs. And then you shouldn't have any trouble finding us there.
Dude, we're coming up on the fall. How do people know when the pumpkin spice brick's coming back out? Because we know it's going to sell out in about 37 seconds.
I don't know, man. I've got a new flavor coming out this month. Actually, I haven't even teased it yet. So you're hearing it here first, but that is going to be a limited edition. It's going to be a nut butter with 100% grass-fed whey. And that's going to be dropping sometime mid-August probably, but that'll be the next thing on the pipeline.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Dude, I love that you do it that way too. Like, cause I see your posts and like people freak out. Like they get so excited about, come on, I got to get this. It's really amazing to watch, dude. So respect to that for you being able to build that following. But like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this one question, and that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Biggest moment of growth. Honestly, man, I think building this business from where it was to where it is now alongside my wife. I mean, there's so many different avenues I could take this, so many different directions I could take this question, but just doing that overall, like if I was, do a high level view, like building something from the ground up, bootstrapping it, going the hard way, not trying to go, the co-pack or outsource anything, or just simply bootstrapping it from the ground up with the person that is my lifetime partner by my side. That is 100% been the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most fulfilling and rewarding thing I've ever done.
I love it, man. Robert, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, but also, continuing to spread the message that you feel is extremely helpful and impactful and game-changing for so many, dude. I like just seeing and like knowing your backstory and seeing that growth that you've done. I love it, dude. And I feel honored that you came on the show. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you having me on here. Like it's like we were talking about earlier. I mean, I got nothing but respect for you. I truly appreciate what you're doing here, and I'm honored to have been on the show.
Dude, thanks. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.